With a total of over 200 suspected murders to his name, Harold Shipman is the most prolific serial killer of modern times. His grisly tally of victims puts him well ahead of Pedro Lopez, the monster of the Andes, who was convicted of 57 murders in 1980. Lopez claimed to have killed many more, but the exact number of deaths was never verified. Until Shipman's crimes came to light, Lopez had the dubious distinction of topping the serial killer league. At present, however, it is a British family doctor, rather than a penniless Colombian vagrant who has become the world's #1 murderer. The sorry tale begins in 1946, when Harold Frederick Shipman was born into a working-class family in Nottingham. Known as Fred, the boy had an unusual childhood. He had a brother and sister, but it was clear that he was his mother's favorite. She felt that Fred was destined for great things and taught him that he was superior to his contemporaries, even though he was not especially clever and had to work hard to achieve academic success. During his school days, he formed few friendships with other children, a situation that was exacerbated when his mother became seriously ill with lung cancer. The young Shipman took on the role of carer to his mother, spending time with her after school, waiting for visits from the family doctor, who would inject her with morphine to relieve her from pain. It is possible that the stress of this experience during his formative years may have pushed him into mental illness, causing him to reenact the role of carer and doctor in the macabre fashion that he later did. By the time Shipman was 17, his mother had died of cancer after a long and painful illness. He enrolled at medical school despite having to resit his entry exams. Although he was good at sport, he made little effort to make friends. However, at this time, he met and married his future wife, Primrose. The pair went on to have 4 children, as Shipman began his career as a doctor in general practice. To many, he seemed kind and pleasant, but colleagues complained of his superior attitude and rudeness. Then he began to suffer from blackouts, which he attributed to epilepsy. However, disturbing evidence emerged that he was in fact taking large amounts of pethidine, on the pretext of prescribing the drug to patients. He was dismissed from the practice, but surprisingly, within 2 years he was once again working as a doctor, this time in a different town. In his new job, the hard-working Shipman soon earned the respect of his colleagues and patients. However, it was during his time at Hyde, over a 24-year period, that he is estimated to have killed at least 236 patients. His status as a pillar of the community, not to mention his kindly bedside manner, for many years masked the fact that the death toll among Shipman's patients was astoundingly high. Over the years, a number of people, including relatives of the deceased and local undertakers, had raised concerns about the deaths of Shipman's patients. His victims always died suddenly, often with no previous record of terminal illness, and they were usually found sitting in a chair, fully clothed rather than in bed. The police had been alerted and had examined the doctor's records, but nothing was found. It later became clear that Shipman had falsified patient records, but at this stage, the doctor's calm air of authority was still protecting him against closer scrutiny. Then Shipman made a fatal mistake. In 1998, Kathleen Grundy, a healthy, active 81-year-old ex-mayor with a reputation for community service, died suddenly at home. Shipman was called and pronounced her dead. He also said that a post-mortem was unnecessary, since he had paid her a visit shortly before her death. When her funeral was over, her daughter Angela Woodruff received a badly typed copy of Mrs. Grundy's will, leaving Shipman a large sum of money. A solicitor herself, Mrs. Woodruff, knew immediately that this was a fake. She contacted the police, who took the unusual step of exhuming Mrs. Grundy's body. They found that she had been administered a lethal dose of morphine. Surprisingly, in murdering Mrs. Grundy, Shipman had made little effort to cover his tracks, either to forge the will carefully or to kill his victim with a less easily traceable drug. Whether this was through sheer arrogance and stupidity or through a latent desire to be discovered, no one knows. However, once the true nature of Mrs. Grundy's death was uncovered, more graves were opened and more murders came to light. During his trial, Shipman showed no remorse for the 15 murders he was accused of. There were known to be others, but these alone were more than enough to ensure a life sentence. He was contemptuous of the police and the court, and continued to protest his innocence to the end. He was convicted of the murders and imprisoned. 4 years later, without warning, he hanged himself in his prison cell. Today, the case of Harold Shipman remains mystifying. There was no sexual motive in his killings, and, until the end, no profit motive. His murders did not fit the usual pattern of a serial killer. In most cases, his victims seem to have died in comfort, at peace. It may be, as several commentators have pointed out, that he enjoyed the sense of having control over life and death, and that over the years he became addicted to this sense of power. What is clear is that in finally taking his own life, Harold Shipman ensured ultimate control, that no one would ever fully understand why he did what he did.